Hunters, but if you made me pick right now, I'd be leaning a lot more towards Perry.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest Andrew Palomo. That's a name you'll get to know. He's running for Congress in the 8th Congressional District Republican primary. We're taping this show on just before Labor Day, September 4th, 2011. Most people say the campaign season kicks off then. People are starting to look really fairly intensively at the Republican presidential candidates. And let's start out there because you can tell something about somebody in terms of who he hangs with, who you're comfortable with, who you identify with, and all that. So you've got 9, oh, you got many more, but I'm thinking of at least 9 candidates, some who are in here and some who are not, some who I think might be in the race. You've got Mitt Romney, you've got Perry from Texas, you have Palin. Everybody knows she's not yet said she's going to run, but she sure sounds like she's going to run. Sarah Palin, and you have Bachmann, who is running. You have Ron Paul, of course, the Libertarian, who's running. And then you have Chris Christie, governor from New Jersey, who says he's not running, but people said he's said to have been in Chicago this past week, doing stuff, talking to people. Mitch Daniels, who said he's not running, but I wonder if he could be talked into it. Marco Rubio, who people say will be a VP candidate nominee, but could he run for president after just 2 years in the U.S. Senate? And Paul Ryan, who said he's not running. So of all those people, whether they're in or out, who would you most identify with?
Probably the last person that you said, Paul Ryan.
Paul Ryan, okay. Yeah. So you'd like to see him running, you think? Or do you think you just identify with him? But
your question was, who do I identify with?
Paul Ryan, okay.
Would I like to see him run? I wouldn't mind it, but I think right now he's probably doing a lot of good where he's at. He's the only person who's stepped up and really put himself out there, just threw himself into the line of fire with a plan that nobody else is willing to talk about.
Okay, so I have the serious candidates now. Let me just ramp it up here. So you got Romney, you got Palin, I think will be in there possibly. I think Bachmann will be out. I don't think Paul, although he can get a chunk of the vote as Libertarian, is really a serious candidate. And you've got Perry who will be in there, Perry from Texas. If you had to choose among those 3 candidates, who do you think you'd go with?
Today, Perry.
Perry. Okay, you're comfortable with him? Or just more comfortable than with Palin or with Romney?
More comfortable with what I know versus Romney.
And what do you know about Perry that makes you more comfortable with him than Romney?
He's gotten things done. He's been governor of the only state that's had growth in the last 10 years, and he gets a lot of flack for the type of policies and crony capitalism and things like that. But one thing I've learned very quickly is to look a little bit more on where the actions have led, rather than just judging by what we're given in the media. No offense, I don't know if you consider yourself part of the media, part of that problem, but given him the benefit of the doubt, at this moment in time, he has the record. Period. End of story. Half the growth in this country and the job market is his state. Period. How do you argue with that? He's flawed, just like the rest of us are. But given the 2 choices that are at the top of the ticket, Romney and Perry, I'm going to lean heavily towards Perry.
Right.
I can make a prediction on your show if you'd like.
Sure.
I do not think Sarah Palin's going to run.
Really?
Let's see how smart I really am.
Okay. And so you think she'll announce soon she's not running, or she'll just continue to tease for a few months?
I think she's jockeying for a vice presidential ticket.
Again? Why would she want to do a second run as a VP candidate?
Didn't hurt her very much the first time, did it? She became a national topic
right.
after that.
But I think, given that, wouldn't she be somewhat radioactive at this point? With all that criticism? For who? For whoever chooses her. I mean, do you think she's really experienced in the world of foreign policy? And do you think that's unimportant for a person who's running for vice president?
You're never going to find anybody who's experienced in...
Not experienced, but at least demonstrated that they have the ability to discuss the issues with some fluency. Do you think she's just demonstrated that in foreign policy?
No. I think we all know that she's had some...
State Senator Barack Obama was talking national issues in that chair when he was sitting here back in 2002 and thinking of running for the U.S. Senate. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure he was thinking and talking those issues 3 or 4 years before. Okay? So although he was a state senator for 8 years and then a U.S. senator for 4, limited amount of actual national foreign policy experience, the man knew the lingo. He knew the language of foreign policy. He could discuss it, whether you agree or disagree with him. I don't think Sarah Palin's ever demonstrated that, not when she was running, not now, not before. There's nothing personal about Sarah Palin, just saying if people think that's important, well then they ought to, think again about Sarah Palin.
I'm not a Sarah Palin advocate or defender, so
you're just saying
it seems to be something that you're very interested in.
Well, let's go over
my prediction is that if Mitt Romney continues on his current course, he's going to have to do something to pick up the part of the Republican base that he's missing, that Perry's essentially stolen. And
the hardcore conservative base segment of the Republican Party, Romney seems not to be able to attract. And his hope somewhat now is that Perry will have to divide that up with Michelle Bachmann and Rick Perry. But at some point that's going to change. It's going to be, people predict it would be a one-on-one with Romney going one-on-one with Perry.
Right.
And unless Romney figures out a way to get to the base, you're saying he's in trouble.
Yes. And I think that the Tea Party is not a big fan of Mitt Romney, and I think that's a problem for him.
Would the Tea Party, when they get to know you, Andrew Palomo, will they become a big fan of you? You don't know? You know the Tea Party, you know you. What do you think? Do you want the Tea Party by your side? Do you think they're a plus or minus for you?
I think they're a plus.
Okay, so you'd like them there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think that the Tea Party is, it's such a lightning rod because it's such a powerful force. It's the most recent political force that we've seen just come out of nowhere. I mean, it's a. And
what do they mean to you? If you had to say in one word, what does the Tea Party stand for? What would you say?
Activism.
Activism, and maybe 3 words. What are the activists about?
The activists are about taking the country back.
Who took it? Where do they want to take it from? Who's got the country now?
I would think that the Democratic Party has really come a long way from what I knew it as a child, where it was more a party of the people, party for the people. Is what they position themselves, the working man's party.
The Democratic Party.
The Democratic Party.
That's how people thought of them before.
Yeah, back in the old days.
Okay, but not anymore?
Prior to Dan Rostenkowski.
Okay,
I think they still try to project that image, and I really think that when you look at what they do, where their philosophies are, the laws that they want to pass, the agenda that they have, has proven to be quite otherwise. And I don't understand how anybody can make an argument that that's not the case. They think that the government knows better than the individual. And
the Democratic Party stands for that. And the Republican Party stands for?
The Republican Party stands for something a lot different. I wouldn't say, we're painting with broad brushes here.
Yeah.
So in that context, pardon?
Paint me a picture of the Republican Party in a sentence or two.
The Republican Party is paying a lot more attention to the Tea Party, correct? The Tea Party is a lot more in tune with the people, with people trying to remind us that, it's we the people, it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. It's not.
So the Democratic Party, you're saying, has taken the country and let the government take over, and you're saying the Tea Party...
Let the government take over?
Or it's taken over, or encouraged the government to take power from the people to the government. This is your view.
This is my view.
And the Tea Party is trying to take that power back from the government, back to they the people. Is that right?
Correct. Okay. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
You're a better speaker than I am, so. You said that better than I could ever come up with.
So, you're running in the 8th Congressional District. I mean, right now, Joe Walsh is the congressman from that district. He's getting a lot of play. People who don't live in that district are seeing Joe on Chris Matthews, that small to middling show that the MSNBC has, Hardball, right? So he's getting.
Can't say that I've ever seen it.
Yeah, we haven't. Well, but Chris,
I've watched more of
your show. You've heard that Joe has been on there.
Somebody's emailed me. You
Take
get those,
a look. Yeah.
the YouTube clips.
All right. So, and Joe had a spectacular race, one would say. It was a spectacular surprise that he beat the incumbent, the 3-term Democratic incumbent, Melissa Bean. People thought it raised, $3 or $4 million more than that. Joe had 40 cents, not much more. He didn't have the National Party behind him. They had abandoned him. And so he, sort of in a Cinderella story, he won that race.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've put his home outside the district in the 14th, they being the Democratic Party, who Where here in Illinois, it's pretty much the Democratic Party. Whenever you say they, I mean the Democratic Party, but you have a Democratic governor, the substantial majorities in the state Senate, the state House, the judiciary, the state Supreme Court leans Democratic, most of the judges all over.
Leans?
They are.
You're very kind.
Well, I think it's only 4-3 in the state Supreme Court, I think. If you go in circuit court at Cook County, many more people would be Democratic than Republican, so it depends. Okay, but they also control the federal redistricting, and basically the Democrats are redistricted the congressional districts so they could take back the seats they lost, which would be the 8th congressional district is one of them.
Don't forget, we lost population in Illinois. So
you lost a seat.
We've gone from 19
to 18,
which gave them the right to do some massive redistricting, even more than normal, because we've gone down a seat. So then the party in power, the Democrats, are obviously going to try to position a couple of Republicans to run against each other. Why wouldn't they? I can't begrudge them for that. If I assume that the Republicans would do the same thing. I would hope they would if they were in power.
Right. Okay.
I
So anyway,
I hope I live that long.
I don't want to get into all that, but other than to say, so that's what's happening. You've got 2 Democrats running, at least in the Democratic primary. We had Raja Krishnamurthy on already. We're planning to have Tammy Duckworth on. And you're running on the Republican side. Walsh says he doesn't know what he's doing until the lawsuit by the Republican Party challenging the redistricting is over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's mentioned that his office is in the 10th, his home is in the 14th, and I don't know, his upbringing is in the 6th, or who knows what, something like that. We'll have Joe come here to say it more clearly. The point is, Joe may run, may not. You're saying you're in no matter what.
Correct.
Okay. Because you think you're the best person to represent the people you've met or people who've jumped in, you're the best person to represent the 8th, right?
I'm not a politician. I'm a regular person.
Citizen politician.
Correct.
Okay.
There's a vacuum. This map has been redrawn and has put this out there. And it's a completely different district from what Joe is currently in and representing.
The dominant areas in this district now are Schaumburg and Hoffman Estates, right?
Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates, Itasca, Addison, parts of Bensonville, parts of Elmhurst, Lombard, makes an odd-shaped V, parts of Buffalo Grove. Theoretically, I mean, being sarcastic there, it says part of Arlington Heights, but I think it's just a few blocks next to the highway. So
a little bit of Wheeling, but not much.
Can't confirm that, but I do
a little bit of
so.
Palatine, not much.
A little bit of Palatine, just so you can get up there and
a little
grab.
bit more so of Elk Grove Village, more of that.
A lot of Elk Grove Village.
Maybe a little bit of Streamwood.
Bloomingdale, parts of Streamwood, Hanover
parts of
Park.
Rolling Pat.
Yeah, it's kind of going down this way and back up.
Carpentersville.
Elgin, back up into Carpentersville, and then half of my town, South Barrington. Half of my town's been left in the old 8th. I'm in the old 8th and the new 8th. So I'm just a person that's sitting there, I'm not going to make statements like you're encouraging me to there, that I'm the best man for the job. I mean, obviously I believe that, or I wouldn't
best
be doing
person, I'd be equal in genders here. It could be a
I was
woman
using
out there
it, yeah, and they're more than likely will be, so I'm just using the old
Well, it was
colloquialism.
Tammy Duckworth, so there's certainly one woman or
Correct.
female already in the race, one woman
And it very possibly could be on the
on the
Republican,
Republican
side.
side.
My issue
But
is...
so your issue is?
My
What's
issue
your
is I'm not going to wait.
Okay.
Okay, we've been waiting for a long time. We're going to wait for this lawsuit to be
Is the
settled
country
in
on the wrong
November?
track?
Absolutely.
Okay, and why is it on the wrong track? What would you do to change it? If you could go to Congress and change things, 2 big ifs, but if you could,
I appreciate your support.
what
Two
would you
big
do?
ifs.
How would you go? Well, it's big if to be able to change things because people go
That
to
I'm
Congress
aware
and they can't. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a big if to
You
win.
get to Congress, who will get into how much money you have and all that.
Yep.
How much glitz, charisma, all the things that this takes, right?
Well,
But
no,
anyway,
no, I'm
so
unaware.
what's the big issue here? What would you go to Congress to change?
The first thing that has to change is the short-term attitude that we have. We've got policies in place that are short-sighted. The government currently, and our current president, criticizes Wall Street for being short-sighted and looking at short-term profits at the expense of others and at the expense of doing the right thing.
So you're saying he's right, you got to take the long-term view?
What I'm saying is that he seems to be more of a hypocrite because when he's producing plans, he's going very, very short-term.
Short run, like
So,
the next 15 months because the election is in 2012.
yes.
Okay.
We're going to have a big speech coming up on Thursday.
You don't really
I'm-
expect that. So again, people may see this just after that, depending on where you live. The speech is now scheduled for September 8th.
Mhm.
When they've seen it, it's come and gone. Tell me, what can the president say, in your view, Forget party.
I didn't fully answer your other
okay.
question, the short term versus the long term.
Okay.
The long term has to be the top consideration. We have to stop worrying about congressmen getting reelected. It's the law of the land that it's a 2-year cycle. But what we need are people who are willing to go in there and vote what they believe is the right thing, the right path to put the country on, whether it's going to cost them the next election or not.
On the economy, what's the right thing long term to be doing now?
The right thing long term to be doing right now is to get our act together, to get, you can't put regulations on business. You can't have temporary tax codes in place. You can't have the creation of agency after agency who gets to create regulation after regulation. There's so much unknown, so
Less
much
regulation
uncertainty.
you have to do. From the EPA, right?
I
Yes.
I
Less
guess-
regulation in general is what
I
you're
guess
saying.
you can pick it.
Yeah, but less regulation. You want to see less regulation. That'll be good for business and good for jobs
It's going to be good for the country.
and good for the country.
Have you ever tried to start a business?
Yeah. Isn't it terribly hard? I mean, you can start
kind
a
of business?
Legal recruiting. If you want to become a legal recruiter,
Who
you can get a license easily, and you can do legal recruiting.
who do you report to?
You can start a law firm if you've got a license to practice law.
Who do
You
you?
can start an accounting firm.
Who's your regulator?
Well, there are a variety of people, not so much in legal recruiting, but who regulate the accounting profession, federal and national and state, right?
So, well, who do you report to first? The federal or the state?
Well, they probably do it simultaneously.
You
We
would
don't-
hope. You would hope.
Okay.
That's
But the point, we can't
No,
go
you-
into a whole show about regulation, and I don't.
right. But
know.
you said EPA, and I'm not going to limit it to or say it's the EPA or not. What I'm trying to tell you
Well,
is
just recently, it's come up that Obama himself has told basically the EPA to back off from some clean air regulations, right? Because
which
he's
seems
afraid
very
it's going to be costly to
correct.
business.
no, because he was told that this is a bad idea, that you're going to be looking at 10% unemployment if you stay on your same path. And what he's doing is creating a very temporary. Let's look at
But
that.
you would applaud that direction, even if it's short, even if it's politically motivated. You would say less regulation is to the good, right?
Not always.
But in this case, the clean air that I referred to, you think he's doing the right thing by telling them to back off?
No.
Okay.
I
So you
think-
should have gone ahead with that
I
regulation?
think you shouldn't have put it in the first place.
Okay.
Why are we changing our course?
Okay.
That's sort of my problem with what we have in
It's
Washington,
on the regulation
D.C.
side. We got to go over to other things. So on the regulation side,
Don't accuse me of never fully answering questions.
I know.
Because I'm trying.
But we've
But
got
you're-
about 10 topics to cover, and we got maybe 10 minutes left. So
Alrighty.
so
Go
let's
ahead.
try to,
I'll go quick.
on the financial stuff, deficits, debt, spending, taxes. What's the one thing you think this president could do? Forget whether he can do it politically. What could he do and announce this week on any of those issues, taxes, spending, deficits, that might have an impact on business in the next 2 or 3 years?
Would you like to just pick one so I can keep it short?
Yeah,
Taxes?
Taxes.
Making a tax policy that's less than 7 to 10 years does not give businesses or individuals the ability to plan. And then what you get is stagnation, and you end up with the economy that we've had. When you pass taxes that are only through the end of 2012, who knows what to do? How can you do estate planning? How do you do estate planning?
So at least
2
5 years,
out?
maybe 10 years.
7 to 10.
7 to 10.
7's a minimum.
So should they keep the Bush tax cuts that were brought in 2001, 2003? Should they keep it? Should he announce we're keeping them all for the next 10 years? Would that be good?
I wouldn't mind it.
Okay.
That's
Not would you mind,
it'd be-
would you think that would be a good idea to
I
do
think
that?
it'd be a nice start.
Even for the people with incomes over $250,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. There has to be consistency. I'll take whatever ills come with that for the consistency of knowing what we're going to have for the next 10
Do you
years.
think that's beneficial to job creation, that those folks with incomes over 200,000 still keep their tax cuts? Do you think
250?
200 or 250? Do you think that's beneficial to those people go out and work, save, and invest and create jobs? Is that why, or do you just think these people deserve the tax cut as much as the lower income people?
Well, I think our whole tax code needs to be seriously looked at and reformed. But what I'd like to
But
remind
short of
you,
that, I'm just talking about the Bush tax
All right,
cuts.
so
You said you
keep-
want to keep it. I'm just
keep the
saying
Bush
why.
tax cuts for
Everybody.
people that make over 250. take
And
it
under
10
250.
And under 250, and it goes 10 years out.
Okay.
I've got news for you. Two people that would be considered ordinary folks, let's say 2 teachers at a high school that are both making 80, 90, and then maybe one's been there a little longer, has
They're
100,
almost over
110.
200,000, yeah.
They're right at 200,000 now. They will be at 250
Right.
before that 10 years expires. All of a sudden, they're not going to feel so rich and wealthy. 250 is a lower number than I think people realize. And 250, the tax cut's on earned income. And people get into this really populist movement about, well, we have to tax the rich. You'd be surprised who's going to fall into that 250 category. You know, it's a lot more complicated than that.
Quick question on school choice. Charter schools, school vouchers, you in favor of that?
I'm in favor of that, yes. I'm in favor of anything that would introduce competition.
And that would do that, charter schools, school vouchers.
You know, if we're painting with the big broad brush because we're going on time, then yes.
That's important with the Chicago public schools, where you have a lot of failing schools. Would it also be important for your district, the 8th Congressional District, which is perhaps more affluent, more succeeding schools? Would you still like to see more choice in education, choice, giving people an opportunity to opt out of those public schools to private schools, take the money, let the money follow the kid, even in the 8th Congressional District?
Even in the 8th Congressional District. I don't think that it would be anywhere near as prevalent or be an issue because of the schools that we have, but it could be in certain areas, and sure, I would love to see competition introduced.
Let's go over quickly to foreign policy. The Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, war in Libya. Would you have supported military action in all of those, each of those 3 instances?
Yeah, that's really, we're looking at, you know, we're beyond Monday morning and Tuesday morning quarterbacking there. So
if you can go back to, I know it's hard, you know, September, we're coming up to the 10-year anniversary of September 11.
I think that the actions have gone on too long. I don't agree with how politicized the military and their decisions have become. I think that our military has been handcuffed by Congress and then by this current administration. So, you know, would I have supported them? Give me more information if you want a specific answer. Let's go with Libya because it's more recent.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't have supported
I think that was wise to take any action to take the action that the president did, which was basically to take the initial efforts and then turn it over to NATO, and we've continued to supply, I guess, resources, I guess is maybe, not manpower, but resources through NATO. I think that's accurate. But you would not have done that. You think the US
I think there's plenty of people that can step up.
Other people, other than
other
NATO?
countries.
Other than NATO?
NATO can do it. France can do it on their own.
We did too much as a part of NATO, is what you're saying. He should have done less? Because, you know, there are conservatives within your party, the Republican Party, who said this thing could have been over long ago if they had led from the front rather than from behind, as Obama said. You disagree with those conservatives?
I just didn't see too much of a need to go into Libya in the first place.
Yeah, Gaddafi, you were not too concerned as to whether he stays there or not, because here was a revolt apparently led by the people to get rid of Gaddafi. Some would say that's a good thing for the United States and other countries. Some would say, let it alone. I guess Rod Paul would probably say that. You'd agree more with Ron Paul on that? Let it alone?
But here's the problem that I have with it. So what's next?
I don't know. What is next?
Syria seems to be rattling their saber quite loudly. So are we just going to steam down the Mediterranean there?
If you could, if NATO wanted to do it and it wouldn't take a lot of trouble, would you be opposed to getting rid of Assad?
I'd really, really like America to focus a lot more on America.
Time for America to come home?
It's time for America to focus on America. It's time for us to focus on our interests that are very pressing here at home. We can't continue to police the world. And every time somebody's out there...
The Afghanistan war.
That was
Obama
ours.
himself called it the good war because Afghanistan trained the individuals, it's thought, who then attacked the United States. Would you have supported the war in Afghanistan initially? That was good.
Yes, because that's an American interest.
But if you had been voting in Congress in 2002, I think it was 2002, when they had the vote to authorize military action in Iraq, you would not have supported that, or you would have?
From everything that you're hearing out there now, that's why I say it's really easy to duck this question, but the information that was provided at the time showed a very clear American interest there.
And so you would have
supported that? So I would have
that
supported that.
Because it showed weapons of mass destruction at the time. It turned out to have been wrong, but that was an American interest, preventing use of weapons of mass destruction.
Correct. Protecting this country, protecting our people, and protecting our interests. That's what America needs to be focused on. We're waking up.
Healthcare, you're against Obamacare, the so-called Healthcare Affordability Act?
Now, you know, the other day when I referenced it as Obamacare, I was scolded for politicizing it. We're supposed to refer to it as the health care.
Well, I'm using it, so they can't scold you.
All right.
But everybody knows what Obamacare is. Would you like to see that repealed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Tell me, what did it do?
Well, it's set up so, in a system, so it falls in place. They would argue, I think, the supporters, that people with pre-existing conditions can now get insurance, which wasn't the case before. Do you agree it wasn't the case, and does that fix that?
I don't think that Obamacare addressed that. I don't think Obamacare has delivered on
Medicare. Does something have to be done about Medicare to enable it to continue to exist, or
absolutely.
Is it major reforms, structural, as Paul Ryan has suggested?
I haven't read through every last line of his policy, but there seems to be a lot of information about Medicare out there where there's massive efficiencies that aren't being taken advantage of. Medicare is just it's the government leading from a central position on a very individual basis, and to me, that's where you have a lot of leakage, a lot of waste occur.
So you need to reform Medicare.
Yes, absolutely.
Spending caps. Should we have federal spending caps that restrain spending?
That's in theory, yes, but there has to be appropriate exceptions for war, natural disasters. We've had hurricanes. We're in the middle of hurricane season right now.
Social issues: gays, guns, God, abortion, evolution. Start with abortion. You're pro-life.
Pro-life.
Does that mean you would not allow any abortions except for the life of the mother, or life and rape and incest would be an exception? What would you
I want to know who the guy that created the card of like what you check off on abortion is.
Well, generally, how would you describe?
Where did we give that guy or girl all of that power?
What does pro-life mean to you?
Pro-life means to me that you value life.
But
to me, it's a very personal.
Abortion, does it mean that the government should ban abortions?
That's
You haven't decided that one yet.
No, I've got it. I have a decision.
Should they ban abortion?